A couple months ago, I repaired my first Game Boy Advance and buried the footage deep in my hard drive because I did a terrible job filming this. I need to clean my hard drive though, so you guys get footage with a voiceover, since some of you are like kinda into that kind of thing. Let's see what we learn. On a visual examination, we found heavy corrosion on the battery contacts and a good amount of dirt, dust, and 20-year-old finger cheese caked into every crevice of this beauty. The seller told me that it wouldn't turn on, so I wasn't shocked by the corrosion, but I was shocked that I actually managed to get it to turn on after messing with the switch for a while. So that's pretty cash money. Once it turned on, I tested functionality and I couldn't find any further faults. I mean, the screen looks awful, but I think that's just how these things were. I did spend the entire time I worked on this freaking out about the dim screen because I forgot what it was like playing on my Game Boy as a kid without my worm light, or the street lights on road trips. How do I make that brighter? Please tell me that's not as bright as that gets. Point is, battery contacts need to be replaced and it needs to be cleaned, so now we can tear it down and see what's inside. To the surprise of no one, on the way in there were some screws with oxidation on them. Those are going to need to be hit with a little bit of vinegar later to clean that up. That'll ensure that nothing spreads to the board and we can keep it nice and clean. Once we got it opened, I realized that my last line was a joke, which is incredible since I hadn't even written it yet. Anyways, big corrosion. I think someone was trying to find out if batteries could ferment, so we're gonna have to give the board a nice deep clean to make sure that this stops spreading and find out if this has damaged any vias, traces, or other components on the board. While we're cleaning up the screws later, we're gonna add this battery contact to the bath and see if it wants to be salvaged as well. Sometimes these can be too far gone and require replating, which isn't the kind of thing that we're gonna do today. At this point, my ADHD kicked in and I decided to show you guys the gunk on the shell better rather than just wait until bath time. So now we get to admire some 11-year-old kids' sweaty hand gunk in 4K. See, I hope that's dirt, but just in case, that's why I wear gloves. We're gonna replace the screen lens later, so I removed the old one now to ensure that we're gonna get a nice soak where it used to be. Also, absolutely incredible work packing this much gunk into the speaker grill. When will the Olympic Committee realize what the people really want to see? I don't know anything about winter sports, but I do know some dudes who can pack some mystery cheese where it shouldn't go like it's nobody's business. Now we can inspect the board a bit before cleanup. The, dirt is also on the bumper. That'll get some extra disinfectant. You know, just in case. As is customary, the speaker is grody, there's some grass by the CPU, the battery corrosion is wet, and the power switch seems to move side to side. You know, it kind of reminds me of the time that I tried too hard on some of my jokes, and people subscribed just to spite. Wait! The battery corrosion's wet? I never figured that out. Was it fresh? Why does it look like it would taste good? Is it sour? It also went on the other side of the PCB. So I could lick this side and you could lick the other side. Now that we know what the board looks like and where it needs some love, we should probably go ahead and clean it up. Maybe we can dry it off too. My confidence in getting this functioning is now severely low. I haven't really had any luck getting handhelds with this amount of battery corrosion to work. Seeing the number of vias here that have corrosion really isn't building my confidence up, since trace repair at that level is well beyond my current skill level. That being said, I'm way too dumb to hand something off to more seasoned hands, so I started just picking away. I focused on just lightly removing the corrosion and then stabbing the via to ensure nothing was left in there, at least as well as I could. 2 months ago, I had not realized the power of toothpicks, so my pokey pointy thing had to do the heavy lifting here. Now let's talk about the wet stuff. Obviously, everyone in the comment section knows exactly what this is and can probably write a dissertation in Latin about the origins of wet. So let's keep this simple, since it's really only going to be for me to reference in the future. Battery leakage can be caused by a number of different factors, but in this case, it's likely just hydrogen gas building up over time. When that gas builds up enough, it can break the seal on a battery and let some of the chemicals inside free. In this case, we're seeing an electrolyte leak out and react with material around it, specifically copper. The exact reaction that comes next depends on the type of battery, but typically it's not something that's great for any copper on the board. This is where we are now. So the wet is just caused by the wet. Anyways, after picking for a while, I would wipe the board down with isopropyl alcohol and reevaluate. I just repeated this process of picking, poking, and wiping until I was happy enough with the board. Once I was convinced that I likely didn't have any catastrophic damage to the board, it was time to move on and deal with the battery contacts themselves. Now, the craziest thing happened. There I was, listening to my mixtape, getting ready to desolder the battery contact, when the solder just melted and the contacts fell right out. Turns out that the mixtape is just that fire. Turns it off, solder just froze right back. Turns it on, it melted again. Promise. I don't believe it either. Crazy to think it's just that fire and has nothing to do with me forgetting to hit record until I was wicking this up. Anyways, the solder was contaminated with corrosion, so I decided I ought to wick it up rather than let it continue to fight me later. You can typically just leave this solder on the board and heat it back up when you're ready to add the battery contacts back in though. Between trying to heat such a large area, the solder on the board being a little stubborn, and my solder still being unleaded at this point, I decided to run my iron pretty dang warm. I probably could have gone quite a bit higher than I did still, but we're hanging around 700 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 370 degrees if your bathroom stalls provide any kind of privacy. Unfortunately, the wick and the flux are from before I upgraded, so both the normal flux and the flux in the wick cooked pretty quick. I probably should have been a bit quicker to clean the board. Once I started, the board had already cooled quite a bit, and this stuff was just a nightmare to get off because of how cooked it was. At this point, I also remembered that I had ADHD again, so I cleaned the entire board next rather than choosing to just solder in the new battery contact and then clean afterwards. So I brushed everything down with IPA, making sure I really focused on the ports, switches, and the area by the cartridge reader where the wet was. Then I was ready to solder in the new contact. So get this, I'm on my way to the editing store where they sell video edits, and I had all my footage in my pocket. I handed it over, but it turns out they must have forgotten the bit where I lined up the contact, dumped solder on it, and did most of the work here. Don't worry though. They remembered the bit where I dumped more flux on it to make sure that I had a nice shiny contact when I was done. I'm not doing my best today, guys. I am not doing my best today. After cleaning it up, I'm pretty happy with the end result. Good contact on the pins as well as the pads. Plus it just looks shiny and pretty. Now we can go ahead and clean up the shell and the other plastics. To clean the plastics, I stuck with my usual approach of hot tap water with dish soap mixed in. I tossed everything in and I let it soak for a few minutes before scrubbing it down. Most of the mess here cleaned up with just a firm toothbrush. For things like the screw posts, I used a pipe cleaner to really get in there. This approach does well for removing debris and degreasing, but for things like permanent markers, it just won't cut it. So, once everything was fairly cleaned up with this approach, I dried it off and moved on to removing the marker that was just everywhere. It was actually a really simple trick for removing stuck-on marker. Just going over it with a fresh, dry erase marker typically wipes it right off. That worked really well on the smooth surfaces, but not so much where the porous plastic is. I think I could have left the marker on for a bit longer, or just used something like baking soda. Maybe even Goo Gone could have done the trick. I just didn't want to use high concentration isopropyl alcohol so I don't damage the plastic. Once I decided we were in good enough shape here, I moved on to removing the corrosion from these screws in the battery contact. Every time I need to remove rust or corrosion from metal, the first thing that I always do is brush it. I'm a little stupid and sometimes it's just dust or it's like really small amounts of acid. In this case, brushing it off is all it took for the screws, so I didn't need to be worried about those. So anyways, those don't have to go in the acid bath, which is pretty cool. The battery contacts, on the other hand, I know are gonna need the vinegar. Now, I'm pretty sure right off the bat that these are a lost cause, but in the name of science, I always drop things into acid when presented with the opportunity. This is definitely the most that I've seen the vinegar react before, and after dropping things in vinegar for the past 5 to 6 months, I'm something of an expert. This sat for a very long time. I mean, it's been 24 hours, and I'm watching these YouTube videos and everybody else is just getting rust falling off of things after 24 hours. What's up, bro? I decided to let them soak for about 10 minutes and then revisit them after. and after just 10 minutes, they were the most rusted contacts I've created so far. I'm pretty sure with some more time-consuming chemistry, these are still salvageable, but I have plenty of replacements that seem to be of high quality, so we're just going to use those today. With our chemistry experiment out of the way, we're ready to assemble and test it out. Once I was wrapped up with reassembly, I made sure there was no dust left behind on the screen and dropped the new screen lens in. Seeing a new lens on this thing really makes it pop, and it reminds me of how much I love the way this design looks. After admiring it for a while, it was finally time to see if it works. So I juiced it up, popped a game in, and turned it on. Now I know the screen on these is pretty dim, but this seems a bit extra, yeah? Remembering that I was super committed to making this a terrible video, I realized I never plugged the screen in. I forgot to plug in the screen. Forgot to record actually fixing it. That wasn't very cash money of me. After plugging it in this time, I figured we could try turning it on again if you guys are still up for it. So I juiced it up, popped a game in, and turned it on. Now I know the games were kind of simple back then, but this seems a bit extra, yeah? Being the seasoned tech restorationist that I am, I knew the only path forward was to take the game out, look at the pins in a super menacing way, and put it right back in without cleaning anything at all. After hearing rumors about what happened to the last Game Boy that defied me, he decided to read the game this time. Alright, so here's the situation. This didn't go great. With it finally working properly, I decided to complain about the screen for the next 2 minutes. And that is the simple process I followed to record my worst video so far. Let me know if the voiceover thing was good for you in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you'd like to see more just like it, consider subscribing. And I will see you guys in the next video.